Good morning and welcome to the economics. Welcome to Long Road. Normally we'd be meeting in college and we'd be doing a variety of activities, but instead you're coming to my kitchen. What I like to do is to explain to you what we're asking you to do in the summer work and also why we're asking you to do that work, and to give you some pointers as to how you might get it done. First of all, my name is Bryn Jones. I'm one of the economics teachers at Long Road, and about half of you are likely to see me in September when you join us. In a way, the work we're asking you to do is in two parts. It looks at both macroeconomics, the large-scale economics that is all around us, and microeconomics, which is when we look at not the economy as a whole, but individual firms, individual companies, individual people. And there's a slight difference between macro and microeconomics. So macroeconomics, there's loads at the moment. The coronavirus is having major impact on the UK economy, and the government has reacted in various ways. And what we're asking you to do is to do some research on this. I want to stress there is no single right answer to this work. What we want you to show us is that you can do some research, you can gather information, and you can put together valid arguments, okay? So there's three sections. When you get the summer work, you'll see that I've asked you to do it in three ways. The first thing is I want you to identify the problems that coronavirus has caused the UK economy. Now these are numerous, okay? But the obvious thing was that the government stepped in and ordered lots and lots of firms to shut. Only essential services could keep on going. So there's had a dramatic effect. The amount of stuff, goods and services that's being produced has gone down enormously. Millions of workers would have been made unemployed had the government not stepped in with what's called its furlough scheme to pay 80% of the wages. I'll come back to that in a minute. But already we're seeing that firms are announcing layoffs. So British Airways has announced that it's laying off 9,000 workers. They're going to be having less flights. Gatwick Airport is laying off workers because they won't need as many to deal with fewer flights. Airbus has announced that it's going to be cutting back production of its planes. So it's likely that the people who make the wings in North Wales are going to be laid off. Fewer engines are going to be needed. Rolls-Royce Aerospace announced the day before I'm doing this, 9,000 highly skilled engineering workers losing their jobs. There were shortages of PPE. There was panic buying in supermarkets. So the effects on the economy have been quite large. And I want you to talk about some of those. Secondly, I want you to identify what has the government done in response to this emergency. So it said we will pay 80% of the workers of any workers who you haven't got any work for, up to £2,500 a month. That's £30,000 a year. Now that's costing the government as much as it costs to run the National Health Service every week. This is hugely expensive. But it means that unlike in America, where unemployment has shot up by millions week after week after week, in this country unemployment has gone up, but not half as much. It's also said to small business owners, we will pay you 80% of your profits so they can keep going. It's redirected the economy to produce many more goods and services for the NHS so that those shortages are being alleviated. It's asked for volunteers. 750,000 people have volunteered to help the NHS. It's introduced new rules, social distancing rules. No longer can you stand within 2 meters. Pretty soon, it's quite likely that they will say that you must have a face covering on public transport. They haven't said it yet, but it's likely to be coming. They've laid down rules on who you can meet, okay? Who you can meet, some of the most basic liberties. And then the third thing we want you to do is we want you to try and stand back a bit and say, okay, the government's done this, but has it done enough? What are people still complaining about? Okay, what about the PPE shortage? What about the deaths of nurses and doctors and care workers? Could they have been avoided, or was that something that no government could have prepared for? What about certain industries? Have they helped certain industries enough? I heard on the radio this morning about the arts industry, theatre, cinema, live music. People saying that these things will just disappear, that they won't come back. So could the government have done more? Try and find out some issues about people who are complaining about not being supported by the government. The second part of the work we're asking you to do is microeconomics. Now, microeconomics, we're looking at two things. The first is something which you more likely know a bit about, fast food industry. And we've given you a Big Mac exercise to do. Now, this is testing your ability to work with numbers. In the A level, 20% of the marks are to do with working with numbers. So if you're going to do economics at A level, you have to be willing to work with numbers. And so that's what this is asking you to do mainly. It's also looking at supply and demand. Supply and demand is the biggest topic we look at in the first term, and this will give you a nice introduction. And we're asking you, why is the price of a Big Mac much higher in Lucerne than in Lusaka? Okay, why is it, excuse me, why is it so differently priced around the world? Okay, and then the last thing we're asking you to do is to answer the question, should governments intervene in individual markets? For most markets, most products, the government doesn't intervene. It says firms can make what they want and buyers can decide how much of something to buy. But recently, the government introduced the sugar tax on soft drinks. And we want you to do some research into the pros and the cons of doing that. Is it right that the government should intervene in a decision of you or me to go out and buy a bottle of Coke? Because that's what's happening, okay? And so the government is taking more control, if you want, of the economy. And some people really hate the government taking control. So the kind of arguments you could put forward in favour of the sugar tax might be things like, well, people don't know how much sugar is in there, so the government is making the price higher so people will buy less of it. Or you could say, you know, the government knows best. The government's got all the research, so they're actually doing something that's going to make people behave in a better way. There are some arguments against, though. Okay, there's arguments like any sugar tax is going to hit poor people much harder than it's going to hit richer people. You could argue, why soft drinks? Why not chocolate? If I don't buy soft drinks, but I buy chocolate and ice cream and Jaffa cakes, I can stuff my face full of sugar and the government doesn't impose any tax on it. So is it fair to just pick on one particular industry? And after you've looked at the arguments for and against, we want you to come to a conclusion. We want you to evaluate, okay? This is a really difficult skill to acquire, but we might as well start early. We want you to look at two sides of an argument and decide which side are you coming down on. Which side of the arguments mean more to you? Now, some of this is quite challenging, but A-levels are challenging. All we want you to do is to do your best and to have done this work by the time you have your first lesson with your teacher in September. Okay? If you have any problems, there is the name of the course team leader, Dave Everett, is right on the first page of the summer work. But if you need to contact, if you need any help, Dave Everett, deverett@longroad.ac.uk. Okay, have a great summer, enjoy doing the work, and we look forward to seeing you in September. Bye now.